Hello and welcome to the Steven Universe Wrestling Podcast. It's a very specific podcast. Talks about all the wrestling-based episodes of Steven Universe, of which there, as far as I can recall, there's just the one.
But wouldn't you argue that in a lot of episodes, Dan, he wrestles with demons?
Oh, yeah, personal demons. That's right. Yes,
Yep.
Yes. He's wrestling with a pretty weird childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes literally wrestling, as in the episode we're discussing today, called Tiger Millionaire. See how I did that? That was such a perfect segue that, of course, I've had to now ruin it by doing this and pointing out that it was such a perfect segue.
It was very good. It was the most professional that a podcast that as yet has no name can be.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, this is Tiger Millionaire. For those of you who don't remember, basically, Steven discovers that Amethyst is secretly getting out her sort of, you could almost call it teenage angst, but that's me adding some sort of foreknowledge to the proceedings. But Amethyst, clearly slightly less mature of the group. That much is clear, and she's sort of getting out some of her her frustrations with just the world by going to this wrestling event where she becomes a character called Purple Puma, and is sort of like in wrestling they have this concept of the face and the heel, the good guy and the bad guy, and the bad guy's thing is to make the crowd boo at him, and the good guy's thing is to make the crowd cheer at him, and then sort of you get everyone's on, usually it unites the crowd on one side. It's kind of the game of wrestling, as it were. So she sort of portrays Purple Puma, a sort of bad heel character, and Steven, when he discovers this, wants to get involved, and he becomes a character called Tiger Millionaire, who makes me laugh no matter what. I've never not laughed at Tiger Millionaire as a character. Just everything he says and does, just amusing. And basically, when he gets a bit too far into being the bad guy, he sort of upsets one of his own fans, which is Lars, who works at the donut shop, for those of you who don't remember. And then the other two gems find out what's going on, and it all sort of culminates in a tag team wrestling match. Now, I remember not being I remember this not being one of my favourites. I remember always thinking of this one as one of the weaker ones of that first sort of, because the first sort of 10, 15 episodes, there's a handful of, I thought there was a smattering, one or two not great ones. And I remembered this being that. I actually quite enjoyed it this time round. So I'm curious to know, Chris, what you thought, because I don't know what I think anymore, Chris. that's the problem.
As previous listeners to this know, one of the reasons we're doing this is because I don't watch a lot of animated shows, and Dan wanted me to watch more animated shows. And if there's one thing I watch less than animated shows, it's wrestling. So it's good episode. No, I'm joking. It actually. Because it's that weird thing of, like, as it's going on, I'm like, well, this isn't the best it's been. By far, it's not the worst, and even less vanilla. I think I really slayed into last week's of being quite vanilla and like meh. This was better than that. But I think that's because if they'd have done at the end, the Gem Power had accidentally turned Tiger Millionaire's mask into a real tiger, then it would be a meh episode, and it would be very vanilla, and it would be like, yeah, that was fine. Tiger Millionaire was kind of funny, but we're done. But because they didn't do that, and because actually it became them against each other, and there was no villain. Like I've said before, like, oh, I kind of want there to be a monster. This episode, I think, benefited from not really having a monster and just being about Gem v Gem and frustrations and being held back and all that sort of stuff. I think that is the reason that, because I agree with you, like, halfway through I'm going, oh, fuck, this is another episode where I'm just going to have to be like, I didn't really think much of it either way. But then when it turns into what it turns into, and actually, even though I'm not like, I'm not this huge sort of, I'm not like a mega fan of this show at the moment. I'm, enjoying episodes and all that kind of stuff. Some episodes make me very grouchy. Even I got a bit of a thrill from seeing it's Amusement and what's the one beginning with G? Granite chase towards each other and fight. Like, that was kind of cool. That's like seeing the Green Power Ranger versus the White Power Ranger. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's an element of it's even for someone that's not like Googling it and looking up and reading about it and having Steven Universe desktop backgrounds. That's still a cool image, and I think those last kind of 4 minutes save it from being vanilla and actually make it a pretty cool episode of this show. And I think that's where your confusion comes from.
Because you think it's kind of the build-up is like kind of vanilla, and then the actual payoff is pretty good. Is that sort of what you're getting at?
Yeah, and the fact that it's not a monster, the fact that you've got gem on gem, and the themes it deals with, I think elevate it slightly to being a good episode. It's it's still not the best version of that kind of thing they've done. I go back to the episode with his dad all the time, but that's, I still think, in my current watching, the best example. But it's the coolest, like, gem on. It's the first time I've been like, oh, that's because you sometimes see things that are cool, and then you see things that are kind of cool because they're fan service.
Mm-hmm.
And the gems fighting each other felt like fan service, and to get a cool fan service moment when you're only 9-10 minute episodes in is it's pretty good going.
Yeah, I think there's
must show some investment.
Yeah, I would say so. And I think there are two other things as well that it's occurring to me now that help this episode along. Again, other than just the comedy, which there is some really good comedy in this episode. I'm not going to spoil the gag, but there's a brilliant bit where Steven asks Amethyst what Purple Puma's backstory is, and it's I think it's pretty good. So I laughed out loud quite a bit. I think the two things that really help is, I think the moment where where Steven goes too far and realizes he's done so, when he knocks Lars's thing out of his hand. That's weirdly heartbreaking, because, like, Steven's just having fun, and then he realizes he's actually upset someone. And
then they do this weird thing where in the very next scene he's, like, nearly half naked, and it's just weird. It feels like they're demoralized. Do you know what I mean? It feels like they're really trying to ram home how depressed he is. He's just this, like, miserable kid in his underwear. It's just odd.
Well, I think
weird.
That was just because it was like they were saying he's, like, not sleeping properly, and he should be. Like, I think that, I suppose you could have just put him in pajamas, though.
No, I mean, like, that's the kind of it's weird to me that I don't necessarily have a problem with it. It's just weird to me that imagery of the character's done something wrong, and then they're in underwear and they can't sleep and they're tossing and turning. I'd associate that with a Netflix drama more than I expected to see it in Steven Universe.
Yeah, well, get used to that, because there's going to be some pretty deep and dark stuff going. I will say, yeah. So so I thought that worked really well, actually, and then they got a good. So not only do they do that, and that feels like a really good moment for Steven, because you're sort of seeing his empathy, you're seeing his ability to sort of look at a situation and think, I've done wrong. I'm better than that, and actually question himself and question his choices. And, like, that's really cool, because it shows the character cares so much about things like that and hurting people and upsetting people, and it makes him very, very relatable. But then on top of that as well, from that you then get the jokes that come out of that from Lars later on in the episode. Now he hates Tiger Millionaire. Like, he has, like, a sign that says, like, Tiger Millionaire is a jerk. Like, and what I also love as well is then the secondary thing that I liked about this episode was it's nice to finally get a better sense of one of the gems. I think there hasn't been an episode focused on any individual gem yet that I can think of. The gems have always sort of shown up and interacted with Steven sort of together. So this is the first, and the first of many, obviously. We're talking about a show that's had, well over 100 episodes at this point. An episode that actually has Steven sort of, getting some one-on-one time with that gem and giving us, as the audience, a chance to learn a bit more about Amethyst. I mean, you don't learn a huge amount about her here, but you do know that she's the most rambunctious, and she does seem to be the most immature. And I think that and the way that the two other gems handle her when they show up, it does feel like parents' teenager.
Yeah.
Like they found out their teenager is sneaking out at night. And I think that's an interesting thing to give to the audience at this stage in the game, because I think that's more character information, not character information, character sort of a sense of what those characters are like than we've had, particularly for Amethyst. I think. It would give me as a first time viewer, I would hope that they'll do more cool stuff showing that how the other gems, on their own work, like further down the line, so we can learn more about them. Separately rather than as a unit.
Yeah, and that definitely made it more enjoyable, I think, and gave it a sense of focus that perhaps Catfingers didn't have.
Yeah, and I did think the ending was quite sweet as well, where Garnet and Pearl both realized that Amethyst was getting something out of it, so they played along.
Yeah.
That was actually really sweet, because the fact they don't know what they're doing, but especially Garnet, when she was like, yes, we are
we're from
evil
Pro World. Yeah,
we're the evil wrestling league, and we want to ban wrestling. I thought that was really funny, and I also love that if you listen, the commentator refers to Garnet as Captain Squarehead or something like that. Which I thought was a nice touch, because he's like, obviously they've shown up, he doesn't know who they are, so he's invented names for them. I think so. On the whole, then, thumbs up. Then, are we saying?
Yeah. Solid episode.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. You know what? Before we recorded this, before I even rewatched it, I was convinced this one would be another Chris Rants one. Although I was fairly sure this would be the last big Chris Rants one. But there you go.
There we go.
Maybe this is the end of the Chris Rants. Then I don't know. I can't see any episodes coming up that are going to bother you.
The thing is, Dan, I'm happy to go back and rant again about Catfingers anytime.
Yeah, you really didn't like that.
And no one else in my life has seen it, so this is the only place that I can really do that. Like, I can't just compare on Nothing But Static or Fringe. I can't compare a shit Fringe episode to Catfingers. This is the only place I can rant about that fucking monstrosity. So,
you really didn't like that episode? Or at this point, are you playing it up for comic effect? That's what I can't figure out.
No, I genuinely
didn't like it.
Fucking really didn't like it.
Well, that's fine, because next week we got episode 10, Stephen's Lion, and my memory of that one is fond. So hopefully we'll like that one.
Cool.
So yeah, that's everything for this week. We'll see you again when we do Stephen's Lion. That sounded wrong. Cool. It sounded like we were going to have sex with Stephen's Lion.
That. I don't know. Yeah, no.
We're not going to do
what his line's like.
We're not going to do Stephen's Lion.
We're going to watch the episode.
We're going to watch it and review it with our clothes on.
Yeah. Well, depends.
Don't tease me like that, Chris.